But so what I wanted to talk about was, had you seen the Franco Zeffirelli one adaptation before this?
Yeah, I saw that's the one they always show you in school. Like that's the one they always show you in like high school and stuff. And like so I'd seen it then. Hadn't seen it I guess in like 20 years almost, you know.
Yeah,
Uh so yeah, it was interesting to go back and see it. And the Luhrmann one was obviously huge when we were young
younger.
young
Yeah,
romantics out
I had
there.
I had the soundtrack on CD.
Yes, and it was a big soundtrack. It's like the Butthole Surfers were on that shit, weren't they? Like,
That was a great track that they had on there. I didn't this time around. I didn't identify when it was playing in the movie.
I think it's like
There are
brief when they're on the
yeah
beach. There's like a brief scene.
yeah, and but there's a few. There's a few. There might have been one song maybe. Yeah, that does not like early on in the movie. Like the first song that plays, it's kind of like a hip hop track. It is not on the soundtrack. It's
Really?
not on the soundtrack album. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. And then also that like there's like a little kid who sings in the movie a few times, and he sings a version of "When Doves Cry" and the Prince song, and that one doesn't make it onto the that didn't make it onto the soundtrack CD either. But another song, the "Everybody's Free to Feel Good" song that he sings, is on the soundtrack.
Dude, I'm just thinking now when you're bringing up the soundtrack, like, there's not even like movie soundtracks. Those used to be such a big deal.
I know,
Do
I
you remember
know.
the Spider-Man 2 soundtrack? Do you remember that shit? That was
No,
huge.
I don't remember that.
It was huge because it had that like Dashboard Confessional song, Vindicated,
Mm-hmm.
and Stone Sour, that like Slipknot side project had that like
I know it well. I know
yeah.
it the project well because I actually saw Stone Sour in concert at the
R-
Mesa. Yes, I had some coworker who was like this. Um, he was like this, like he was very like working class guy, and he was an ex-Marine, and he was weird with women at work. Like he would like he did not care about like any of that bullshit. Like
it's
he would just
Mercutio,
like
dude. Yeah.
hit on
Mm.
women at work and get in trouble for doing that, and he did not care, which I thought was kind of cool. But yeah, he was like, hey, you want to go see, like, I just moved here. I just, like, I didn't know anyone, and he was the first person to be like, hey, do you want to do something? And the thing was it was to go see Stone Sour on a bill. I don't remember who else was on the bill except for Power Man Power Man 5000. Like, and this was like 2017, Andrew.
Oh shit! So yeah, this
Okay.
was
Heavy,
Bored.
heavy,
I am heavy, heavy, heavy. Bored.
I may say that the male is entirely hostile. No! Dinner,
resources,
life, friends is boring. We must not say so.
Yeah. And I was like, I'd never heard Stone Sour in my life. I mean, maybe I had and I didn't know it. I mean, had heard Power Man that 5000. It had been about, you know, it'd been like 20 years or whatever, but I was like, sure, I'm down. And it ended up being a very weird night.
Did you were you into Slipknot during the Hot Topic craze?
When I was in like maybe seventh or eighth grade, like I had heard Slipknot, and a friend of mine had their CD, and I thought it was really cool.
Iowa or the
Was Iowa their second album?
yeah, it was like their second major studio album with like the goat, and it was kind of like holographic.
Yeah. So I I think I actually was more familiar with the first one, but I also was like I was really into like certain like I was definitely into like hard rock radio from that era, but but I never got the CD myself or any of their albums myself. And also their aesthetic with like dressing up like kind of like I don't know, garbage man clowns.
Oh yeah.
It didn't appeal to my sensibilities because I was very much coming from like I'd already kind of fallen in love with like the aesthetic that was from like grunge in the
Right.
90s. Like more of like this like I don't know, like sensitive slacker rock guy in that like dressing like clowns. Even if I liked their music, it was a little bit alienating to me. And there were other bands that were doing that too at that time. Like there was this band Mudvayne. I don't know if you remember them.
Oh yeah.
Like they had
Mudvayne.
makeup. And, yeah.
They would the Mudvayne, Mushroom Head, like all those kind of like Ozfest like
Yeah.
acts at the time. It
Yeah.
was like it's just strange because that was like a huge part of like the Hot Topic time and like the mall culture at that time. And
Yes.
speaking of which, yeah, this is another episode of Heavy Board, and we're talking with a mall expert. Speaking of malls, yeah, Brendan from Tales from the Mall. Excellent podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. Brendan, tell people a little bit about Tales from the Mall. Like, what would they get with it? Your podcast, which I've been on, listeners, twice. Brendan and I. This is our third collaboration in the podcasting arts.
Yeah. Well, the thing about so Tales from the Mall is just I mean, it's like a very laid back talk show, I would say. A talk show that that I record over the phone, over like over the what would you even call what phone communication is anymore? Like over the cellular over and I don't know, I've been reflecting on this, but I mean, I think that it's mostly focused on like interviewing, people who are creative or who are creators. I mean, I've definitely interviewed some people who have no creative resume other than they're on Twitter or something like that,
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, I've been interested in Twitter personalities, but historians, filmmakers, artists, writers, other podcasters, and to try and make it as relaxed and intimate as possible. And then I also do a little offshoot of Tales from the Mall that you can also, get on the Tales, on any Tales from the Mall feed. It's called After Hours, and it started out kind of focused on trying to, deal with film noir and crime fiction, but I'm kind of expanding that so that it can just kind of be about any kind of grouping or, of media, like we're doing today, talking about Shakespeare, talking about some movie adaptations. That's kind of the vibe of After Hours. But again, I'm not, it's just trying to be, it's trying to be laid back. And, yeah, that's what I'd say.
Yeah, and again, yours truly is on there for a few of those After the Hours and the regular episodes, listeners. So you have to go give that a download, give that a like, give that a review. Those are very helpful.
Well, you debuted on Tales from the Mall on the After Hours.
Oh yeah. Reverse order then.
That was fun. I mean, that was a good time.
Yeah, it was.
And I felt like that was, that was like we were very free. We were very free to talk about whatever we wanted to, even though we had some we were talking about David Goodis's Shoot the Piano Player and Truffaut's movie of it. And we went in all kinds of different directions, and that was great. That was a legit hang. I think it's really going to hit them in the parasocial sweet spot.
Yeah, dude, that's what we're gonna do today too, dude.
Yeah,
we're gonna be going everywhere because today we're talking about William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, Or I
Yes.
guess technical, like the title is The Most Excellent and Lamentable Tragedy of Romeo and Juliet. But most of us know it as Romeo and Juliet. Most of you have probably read this, forced to read it in high school, or you pretended to read it in high school, and you continue to pretend that you've read it at cocktail parties and all of that. But we've actually talking about the play, and then we're talking about, the 1968 Zeffirelli adaptation, usually the one they show you in high school if you have a teacher that's showing you the movie version. And then the 96 Baz Luhrmann Romeo and Juliet with Leo, as many will come to know, as dominates pop culture for Romeo and Juliet references now. But
Well, yeah. Well, it's so you could so easily pretend to have read it. What with all the, with all the adaptation material out there,
And just like, it's weird because I just had like, this episode isn't out yet. It'll be out when this episode comes out. But I just had an episode on Harold Bloom's like the anxiety of influence, and it's like, this was obviously he loves Shakespeare, and he was talking about that, where he was talking about how Shakespeare, he claims, invented the modern human. Like you could even go as far as to say Shakespeare invented like the modern idea of romance, even like.
Yeah, well, he says like, well, some people say like he invented. Well, first of all, yes, Harold Bloom, right? He had that book like Shakespeare Inventing the Human. It's almost like he's saying that that Shakespeare like invented human consciousness, like people overhear themselves or from what I remember, I'm not.
Yeah,
like,
you're spot on, bro. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Me, I had a little bit of difficulty reading Shakespeare when I was in high school. And I think that's fair, I mean, it takes a good, it takes a teacher to really like explain it and make it real. But then when I think I might have been a junior in high school. My dad and I went and saw King Lear.
It's one of my favorites. Yeah.
In New York. With Christopher Plummer, the great Christopher Plummer as Lear. And I remember standing in line and like a sedan, like a tinted window sedan pulling up, and James Earl Jones getting out.
Oh shit.
He was going to be there, and my dad was like, I bet he played a Lear back in the day. And then we went home, and my dad had this big collection of Shakespeare, like multi-volume, and he opened it up, and the first page was a picture of James Earl Jones as Lear, and so he was right. My dad. And so that was big for me, even though I didn't fully get what was happening. Seeing actors acting it, and putting emotion behind it, emotion behind these like challenging dialogue. I could pick up more of it, and then later on I saw The Tempest at the Globe Theatre in London, and that was like, and there it was outdoors, it was light, and I could actually read along with the play, and so I started to understand it a little bit better.
Because my first experience with Shakespeare was the same. It was in high school, obviously, and then like you hear about it, you even if you've never read it, certain lines,
yes,
and then like you probably are forced to read it in high school, and like you don't really understand. Do you remember those like No Fear Shakespeare?
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
yes.
They would like be at like Barnes and Noble. Yeah, basically, yeah. It's like a modern language version, and it was
okay.
The nice thing about it was that they did have it on separate pages, so they had the one side would be like the actual language, and then like the other side would be like the kind of modern translation, so that you could kind of read it without like having to dissect any of the language. I just remember I had one of those in high school. Yeah, I think there were a lot of Shakespeare plays that they usually make you read in high school. Like I remember having to read Hamlet, Macbeth,
sure.
King Lear, Romeo and Juliet, all of that. And then, of course, in college, I majored in English, so I had to take like an entire course on Shakespeare. And I read a lot of plays for that. And then in grad school, I actually took another Shakespeare course then. So then you're reading all these same plays over and over again. But even then, like I think reading it now, like because my next thing is usually how it read for you. Like reading it now, it was a different experience reading it. Like I hadn't read it in maybe like 10 years, and I was just like, man, this is one of those things that it just gets better every time you read it. Like you understand more of it, you pick up on more of it, like every single time you read it. And I have this like huge thing left over from undergrad and grad school, like the Norton Shakespeare collection. So it has like all of the plays and then all this critical writing and shit in it too.
Beautiful.
Just, yeah, you know, my background is just, of course I have this on my shelf. But the great thing about it is that, it, you know, they do have like the little kind of footnotes and shit where you can like, they do explain some of that, like some of the words that like we're like don't use anymore and shit, you know, chords for ladder, you know.
Yeah, and that's I mean you almost need that, you know.
Yeah, especially.
Well,
so how did it read for you this time in terms of like, yeah, obviously something you had to read in school and all that, and you have background in studying this type of shit, you know?
yeah, but you know what though? I was not that great of a student when I was in high school.
Oh,
You know,
me
like
neither, yeah.
I was just very like indifferent. I was more interested in like, I don't know, like performance, I guess you could say, like being funny and I mean, and my teachers liked me and all that, but I remember reading it in high school in an English class, ninth grade, and I remember us watching a little, you know, like watching segments of Zeffirelli, and then like us like begging our teacher at the time to like see like the nude scene that's in it. We begged her and she did it, and that was really cool. But this time around, I mean, I realized that I missed so much, and I missed so much from even like watching the movies. Like probably my first exposure to Shakespeare ever was the Luhrmann the Luhrmann adaptation. But I think the thing that stands out to me is how much it is really about. And in reading it, I get, you know, it first of all, I mean, it was like, I understand, you know, I found it very easy to read and very good to read. And I was struck by how the rise and fall of it all, you know, like the humor and then the seriousness, you know, it just like comes in and out. And I mean, I don't know, you know, I guess we can kind of get into what I took away from it. But I think the one thing that I really kind of took away from it is that I'm not super, you know, it starts out right with Romeo and he's like in love with this girl, and it's not Juliet. And I like forgot that even existed. And the line, you know, in this, like, you know, the like the friar, right? You know, he's at first I was like, this guy, the friar, is gonna you know, hook them up, even though they're just kind of like, he even observes like, you know, how serious could this kid really be? Like he was just desperately in love with this other girl, right? And now he's all of a sudden like super head over heels for her. But I think he sees in this potential to kind of heal the wounds of his society, of his community, and so that's kind of why he still encourages it anyway. But yeah, I didn't, and some of the, you know, this attitude towards the violence that these two families are engaged in, that I didn't remember that either, you know, and I didn't remember how wonderful kind of these side, you know, in many ways, you know, Romeo and Juliet are like the least of, and obviously there's young kids, you know, I think Juliet's like 13 years old. You know?
She's supposed to be like 14, and I think Romeo's supposed to be like 17.
I see.
something
see.
like that.
Um, but I mean, those people, they're kind of the least of these people, you know, like of these characters. You know, when you really when it gets down to it, it's kind of all about these side characters for me. You know, Tybalt, Mercutio, Benvolio, those characters.
Yeah. And that really does, like, it drives most of the drama too, because the people that are upset are the ones that go into the fighting and all that. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, this is often called like the greatest love story ever told, and it kind of follows that kind of up and down. Yeah, I mean, what I noticed right away, like reading it this time, is just like the poetry side of me, like the music in the verse is so excellent, and I want to get to this in the Luhrmann version in '96. I think they do a great job of like paying attention to that, like when like and we'll get into that later, but yeah, just like the first thing, like right away in the very first scene, you know, you have the kind of that classic kind of chorus stuff going back to the Greek tragedies, but just like penis jokes right away.
Yes.
Like the entire first scene is just like, yeah, Samson, Gregory, kind of just talking about like having sex, like the maidenheads.
Wall, right? The maidenheads.
Yeah.
Draw they tool.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Gregory, tis well thou art not fish, if thou hast been poor John. And apparently it's about his penis being small.
Oh dear.
Yeah. Yeah, tis known I am a pretty piece of flesh. Apparently that's like talking about the penis, piece of flesh.
Yeah.
All that kind of shit. And
Yeah.
then the biting of the thumb.
Right, right.
The fucking insult.
Yeah, that kind of like starts their kind of sparring at the beginning. You know, they engage in violence right away. Pretty much, they're kind of catapulted into this. And I guess you know, there's a line that I find rather interesting. I'm trying to find it here. And I'm curious what you think. And this is from early in the play. Let's see here.
Oh yeah.
I've got the text out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The quarrel is between our masters and us their men. And Samson says, "'Tis all one. I will show myself a tyrant. When I fought with the men, I will be civil with the maids. I will cut off their heads." I don't know. You know, when I heard that line, in Zeffirelli, he interprets it. If you recall, the Gregory goes like, "The quarrel is between our masters," and then he kind of goes like, "And us, their men," and I just wonder, like, to what extent there's already like a commentary there about, I don't know, the difference between masters and their men, you know, and like how silly the quarrel really is, because I mean, do these men, you know, like, do they even really understand what the hell this is all about? Do they don't care? You know, it's just, I don't even know. I guess it's tribalism, you know, in a way. It's really, you know, and really what it is, it reminds me of, you know, and kind of how I would have drawn it up myself, just kind of like taking the Italian context. I would have, you know, kind of tried to play it off like it was some kind of like, you know, mafia scene. And I think the Luhrmann movie kind of gets at that a little bit, just a little bit, you know.
Yeah, and I think
gangsters
in terms of like the universal, like the thing that makes Shakespeare, as so many people would say, or as Bloom would say, is like the fact that it is this kind of senseless quarrel. Like that's really the reason. Like the men don't even really, like, what started the quarrel. We don't even really know what started the quarrel. It's never told to us in the story. And you don't really need to know because it is just kind of like legend lore. Like it's kind of like they don't even know why they have this blood feud that's been going on for years and years between the families. And even then, like there's that scene where like the Montague or the Capulet head of household or whatever, he's just called Capulet in the play. Right when they sneak into the party and he's just kind of like, they're like, oh, like those are Montagues, and he's just like, oh well, let them be, you know, like tonight's a merry night, like we're not going to start quarrels, you know, even though they like snuck in and crashed the party, you know. It's like kind of pick and choose. It's like that's the very universal side of it, whereas like people get very tribal with that. And, you know, you make all kinds of comparisons to the world we see today. People get very tribal and they don't even really remember or know why. It's just like, I guess, like a sense of duty to your, like, lord, I guess, in the case of the play, or like your overseers.
Yeah. Well, I wonder. I mean, I thought that was very interesting. You know, when Capulet kind of like says like, hey, who cares? Like,
right.
You know, that Romeo is here. You know, let's not worry about it. You know, right now we're having a party. You know, and he says, because you know Tybalt, who you know, I'll forever think of John Leguizamo.
Oh yeah.
He says, you know, Uncle, this is a Montague, our foe, a villain that has hither come in spite to scorn at our solemnity this night. Which, that's not really, by the way, I think Romeo's motive, at all.
Yeah.
And you know, they underestimate. I don't know. I don't want to go down this road too far, but they underestimate the power of love. And by the way, Romeo's there not to see Juliet. He's there to see, is it Rosalind? Rosalind, right? And so he says, this is our foe. And Capulet says, young Romeo, is it? Tybalt says, yeah, that 'tis he, that villain Romeo. And Capulet says, content thee, gentle coz, let him alone. He bears him like a portly gentleman, and to say truth, Verona brags of him to be a virtuous and well-governed youth. I would not for the wealth of all this town here in my house do him disparagement. Therefore be patient. Take no note of him. It is my will, the which if thou respect, show a fair presence and put off these frowns, an ill-beseeming semblance for a feast. And then, you know, he basically says, he shall be endured. What goodman boy I say he shall. And then he says, you'll make a mutiny among my guests. You'll set cock a hoop. You'll be the man. And, you know, I mean, I think he's just maybe Capulet's kind of like falling on, you know, just kind of a sense of manners and like respectability and not, you know, I mean, part of this whole thing launches and takes off in that, you know, already kind of like the prince, right? The people who are actually in charge of this community are getting sick of their feuding, you know, and so they're trying to keep it at they're supposed to be keeping it at bay and keeping it under wraps, and what happens is that Romeo's love, and this, you know, they obviously address this like kind of the irony of this in the end, you know, with the prince's speech that he gives to the families after Romeo and Juliet have died. But it is kind of ironic that like Romeo's love passion is like inflaming this conflict, you know, and that's an interesting commentary to me, and I think, you know, and I read this and I watch the movies with a sense of like, I understand what, you know, like Romeo and Juliet are going through, but I also kind of feel like it is a little bit cautionary about like this just like incredibly hot, passionate, kind of like youthful love affair. You know, because these kids don't even know each other.
Yeah.
Andrew. You know?
Oh yeah.
And part of it, I think, is like this forbidden fruit thing that's going on here. Also,
Oh
kids
yeah,
love, you know,
everybody loves forbidden fruit. Yeah,
and I think also that there is a certain type of person, and this could be just like projection on my part, but it did make me think about this a little bit, and maybe you can, I don't know if there's some wisdom within the text that might comment on this, and I can't remember, and I don't remember noticing it. But there is a certain type of person who is not actually capable of like real intimacy,
yeah,
of having a real intimate relationship for whatever the reason, and so they are kind of like attracted to things that are unavailable or doomed, as opposed to, hey, this would be a good relationship that would, that would go the distance. You know, I don't know if you're familiar with that type of person, but
yeah. I mean, I think that there is like, I obviously there's other love stories that Shakespeare has written in this vein, like Antony and Cleopatra and stuff, or even the comedies are pretty much love stories, like The Taming of the Shrew and all of that are, these kind of different, worlds apart kind of love interests that come together, and the kind of, like you said, the power of love, the way it kind of guides you down a path where the path of it can end in these kind of explosions, because it's so passionate and fiery that, and it always does in the tragedies, at least. It kind of, you I know, like Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, like when they were together, when they were like doing all those Shakespeare movies, like
yeah,
and I'm like, the reason that they were like probably really into that is, one, I think because they were obviously, passionately in love with each other and stuff, and like wanting to do those things together, where they always kind of played the opposite love interests too, so
yeah,
that they could, like, I don't know. I mean, I think that that's definitely like a connection in that. And of course, like their kind of relationship almost ended the same way, I guess. Like,
yeah. Well, I think they just, the thing was is that, I mean, they did have like, they had a passionate relationship, and they um it started out pretty, because when Burton met Elizabeth Taylor, by the way, he was married with children. And then he kind of went through this like will I won't I thing with his wife that he was married to, and it was like kind of tortured the family a little bit. And so it wasn't a great thing. But yeah, I think that they were like kind of, I don't know, you could say that they were good for each other, and then they weren't, because I don't think, neither person was kind of like complete. Richard Burton was like a very like a very melancholic person. Elizabeth Taylor, same in a way. I mean, sickly. Um, but yeah, I am drawn to their story.
right. Well, I think
Yeah,
everybody is like this kind of, and it's the same thing as Romeo and Juliet, this kind of very passionate, forbidden love.
yeah,
And then that inevitably explodes,
yeah,
like it can't really without. But I mean, too, for like the kind of character of Romeo, like kind of when he comes on to like the first scene that he's in, he's like kind of, it's obviously the play is called Romeo and Juliet, but like, we start off, we don't even see him at first. We see his friends kind of getting into a fight, and then he kind of comes in after, and it's just kind of like this kind of lovesick puppy dog,
yeah,
like talking about his kind of sensitive young man. I mean, it's fantastic. Love is a smoke made with the fume of sighs.
yes,
Yeah, doth add more grief to too much of mine own. It's just like, All right, let me read this thing because I'm going all over the place. Where he's talking to Benvolio, and he's basically like, being like a little kind of emo boy about Rosalind not loving him anymore. And Benvolio says, "No, cuz I rather weep." Romeo says, "Good heart, at what? At thy good heart's oppression." He says, "Why, such is love's transgression. Griefs of mine own lie heavy in my breast, which thou wilt propagate to have it pressed. With more of thine, this love that thou hast shown doth add more grief to too much of mine own." And just kind of, being purged, this kind of... He's set up right away as love is everything to this guy, and I think this is something that I want to connect towards kind of the emo movement and things that happened during our youth and stuff, Brendan, and kind of the millennial youth, where there is this kind of male lovesick puppy dogness, and people confuse it because, like, there's like 25-year-old like men or whatever that are just kind of what they would call fuckboys, right? Who aren't feeling this kind of deep romantic thing. But like when you're a young teenager and you're just experiencing this stuff, there is that like head over heels aspect to it. Like there is that kind of, it's a cliche, but like that feeling of you would die for this person that you've never even fucking met. Like you see this beautiful woman and you fall in love with her without speaking to her or knowing anything about her.
Yeah.
On the spot. And it reminds me of mall culture too, because that was huge when we were during this time. Yeah. That's why I asked about the kind of Slipknot shit and the Hot Topic shit, like at the beginning of this, because you're the mall expert. But yeah, I mean, what do you like? I'm obsessed with this idea and this feeling, because I think there's a few people that do talk about it. And whenever you do, you do have to bat down, the usual stuff. People are like, oh, you're gay, blah, 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 or like kind of from the male side. But there's also this kind of, I don't know, like, who cares? Or, I don't know. I mean.
Well, I think, here is, so Romeo says, I have lost myself. I am not here. This is not Romeo. He's some otherwhere. And I think there is a certain, way of handling being like an adolescent, because the thing is that when you're an adolescent male, I think there's all kinds of factors that would make you want to escape yourself and escape your surroundings, like like you're kind of on the verge of being able to like be on your own and maybe even traditionally, like at that age or whatever, when you were in times gone by, you might have had an opportunity to like, I don't know, work or something like that. And I think that one really good escape feeling is like that melancholy, like love sickness. It's a feeling that you can really chase, and it'll kind of like put you into this more dramatic headspace, even if it is like presents as somewhat of a sadness. It's still better than some of like that boring emptiness that you feel when you're 14, 15.
Yeah.
I think it's a really powerful way to escape. And I think that some people become like addicted to that even, and into their adult, their actual adult, into their manhood, But I think that, I think that Shakespeare's capturing something of a certain male archetype, because Romeo's here, like Romeo so quickly goes from Rosalind to Juliet, and I think that what he's in love with here is just like he's in love with love,
Yeah.
Because I think he starts talking about. He starts talking about love first, not this. He's not talking about a person. He's not describing a person first. He's describing his feeling, and I think that's kind of like he's trying. He loves that experience, and I don't know. I mean, just also add on to the fact that he's in this family. They're in kind of like a civil war. I mean, what a powerful way to escape his surroundings.
Yeah, and I like the archetype as well. That kind of like one, because I think it's an archetype that is always been prominent. But yeah, this idea of love as not as like a drug, but as like an idea that feeling of being in love, like when you're first meeting someone. I mean, it is kind of hard to beat, I guess. It's almost euphoric, like that kind of, and Romeo chasing that, describing Rosalind, and then like he forgets all about Rosalind the second he sees Juliet.
Yeah, and I don't know, good for Romeo for getting involved with Juliet, because when he describes Rosalind, he's describing like kind of like this impossible, like ice queen woman. He says, she'll not be hit with Cupid's arrow. She hath Dian's wit, and in strong proof of chastity, well armed. From love's weak childish bow she lives uncharmed. She will not stay the siege of loving terms, nor bide the encounter of assailing eyes, nor ope her lap to saint seducing gold. Oh, she is rich in beauty, only poor that when she dies, with beauty dies her store. He's saying she's gonna live chaste and not have kids. She hath in that sparing makes huge waste for beauty starved with her severity. So she's a beautiful woman, also severe. For beauty starved with her severity cuts beauty off from all posterity. She is too fair, too wise, wisely too fair, to merit bliss by making me despair. She hath forsworn to love, and in that vow do I live dead that live to tell it now. I mean, I've known this woman, by the way. And there is something attractive about it, but I don't know what makes him. Yeah, I mean,
the sting of rejection.
Yeah.
From that. Yeah, it's always interesting too compared to his friends. Like all his friends are just kind of goofing off, like kind of dicking around, partying or whatever, and then like he's just kind of like roaming around lovesick, like looking for somebody to like fall deeply in love with next. Like he's that kind of.
Yeah. Well, the thing I observed, and this is something that I actually that the insight kind of came to me in watching the Luhrmann version, is especially with the Montague guys, the way it starts, the way the film basically starts with the Montagues, and it's Jamie Kennedy is one of them.
Oh yeah,
right. Jamie Kennedy is one of them, and one of them's Dash Mihak, and they're very silly, and like they're like really silly. They're like, like they're like kind of comic figures, even like Three Stooges types,
Yeah.
And they really love goofing off and being just kind of like a menace to society. And Romeo's seriousness of purpose is in contrast to that. And I was like, these guys aren't interested in the things that Romeo's interested in. But I also think that it speaks to the way that so many of like I like to be funny and make jokes, but I was also like a very serious young man. I took myself seriously, and I took my love seriously too.
Right.
But I think that there is like something to be said about men keeping that to them. Like I think a lot of men like are vulnerable to romance or to a woman or whatever, or to love, but they just keep it to themselves, and they put on this other, they play act this other side. And I saw that really cropping up very strongly with the Montagues, particularly in the way that it's portrayed in the Luhrmann film.
Yeah, and what would you? I mean, I don't know. What would you call that? Like, would you say that that's a maturity, or in men as they learn to not follow like the Romeo lovesick, don't follow every path down there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it seems to me like I don't know. I don't know what advice would you give your son? You know, what
Right.
advice would you give your son? Like I would say, hey, look, I would say to my son, I would say to him like, well, Romeo has an obsession.
Right.
He's got an obsessive personality. And that comes from somewhere. And I don't know if it comes from somewhere like completely healthy. I think there is kind of like this healthy. I mean, is he younger than these guys? But it does seem like they're more interested in like, like going around town and like fighting swords and stuff like that.
Yeah, like none of them mention their love interests or like anything like that when they're talking, and in fact, like when they are talking, they're kind of not discouraging him, but being like kind of almost making fun of him, like
Yeah.
basically saying, "Oh yeah, dude, like you're thinking with your dick, actually, like you're acting like you're all romantic, like yeah, you just want to put it in her maidenhead."
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess Mercutio gets a little bit more sensitive, but he's also like the comic guy too. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And they really, I think the guy that plays Mercutio in the Zeffirelli one is really good. He really captures that. I'm not sure. I feel I understand the choice of who they used in the Luhrmann one, but I didn't get the sense that he had that strong of a grasp of the material.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they really needed that guy to be like, they make they make Mercutio like kind of out to be like kind of like a drag character, and
Yeah.
in fact, I observed, Leguizamo and Mercutio. I'm just calling him Leguizamo. Tybalt, and Mercutio. Like I did kind of see like that there was almost like this kind of like erotic tension that was being played up in the Luhrmann piece.
Lerman makes
Yeah.
some strange decisions. Yeah. With one, I think is Mercutio's death in that one. I thought he made kind of a, at least when it was happening compared to the Zeffirelli version, like, because he has that kind of monologue he's going on, and kind of he's joking, but also he's dying.
Right.
That Zeffirelli kind of captured pretty well, that actor. And then like in the Lerman version, I was thinking like, I don't know if they're I don't know, strange decision. There's another one too that I think Lerman dropped the ball on for iconic kind of scenes. But yeah, under love's heavy burden do I sink. Like that line alone, like Romeo, under love's heavy burden do I sink. And I like the description of that. Love's heavy burden. What do you think of that? Like, or just like the burden of love in general? Because
I don't know. It's like, is he is he destined to? I mean, is this just kind of like, is he just like acting out? It seems to me to be more about like, I don't know, his fate as a person, and that like his psychological trait to be so obsessed with this thing. I think that's obviously like his obsession is his fate, and I think that's true for some people, like that they're given a burden in life with some kind of like psychological obsession or even a gift. and that gift ultimately is their destiny, and it's not always a good one, and it's not always a good one.
Or just
Um,
like the vulnerability of it,
yes,
the kind of, because it is kind of a heavy feeling, like
yeah,
when you are in that stage of love, and this is love at first sight too, which is the most romantic version of this.
yeah,
Like it's it is kind of a heavy feeling in your chest, and then to be carrying that around, and he kind of describes himself sinking under it too,
yeah,
almost like you're drowning in it, or yeah, obviously foreshadow the death, you're drowning in this love, you're, despite it feeling good, you're still, you can easily slip under the current, and be pulled under.
yeah. Well, I wonder if, I mean, and to me, I kind of like, they're trying to get, with that, they're trying to get Romeo to like participate in their reverie,
Right.
you know, and and he's saying, like uh that he has a soul of lead, and to me, it's almost like he's saying, like, like I'm burdened with like like basically like I'm a depressed person. I have a depressive personality, and I'm not like you. And Romeo's very much like I'm not like other guys.
Oh
He's like
yeah.
I'm not like other guys. And I think there is a um that's part of this kind of type of personality, and being so like, oh, I'm so, like I love so deeply, and am so romantic, and it's like, so I'm not like other men. It's trying to separate yourself from other people,
I
and people do
wonder,
that.
do you think that that's real, that there are men that feel the burden of love more than others, that there is a difference between those kind of
Ah,
hopeless romantic Romeos and your average kind of dick jokes in the town square pulling out swords?
well, I think maybe it's possible that maybe there's a certain aspect to it that you know young like young boys at a certain, like, they're not as comfortable around, like, with their peers, and with being male. Like, I'm not saying like that they're like, I'm not saying like I'm not trying to do like queer theory here at all. But I'm
Yeah.
just saying that I think, like, um there are certain boys that are like uncomfortable with masculinity. Maybe they have a father they don't want to be like, or something like that.
Or
And
maybe
so they,
just they love harder than others. And like you
yeah,
were
I mean,
saying, kind of like personality.
yeah, yeah.
I'm just thinking of
But
it. Yeah, like
but my point, Andrew, would be that it comes from somewhere, that it comes from somewhere, and I don't know if it has to do with, I tend to think it has to do with early um early family dynamics or something like that. Like, I was really I I was interested in separating myself from my male peers, and I've always been drawn to women, and romance, and obsessive romance,
yeah.
and and I do think that there are just, and so I guess to answer your question, right? Yes, there are men that are more inclined that way than others. It's not an act. And my question would just be like, well, where does it come from? Um,
Is
but
that kind of emo sad boy?
yeah, where does that come from?
Yeah, that's yeah. I don't have no idea, but I mean, I do. I'm only asking this, and yeah, I'm not, thinking we're gonna get any definitive answers, but it just like I am fascinated by this idea of, am I the only one that's feeling this? Out of like whatever your little group of friends or whatever, when you're that age, kind of. Don't you understand? Kind of like there was always that kind of element to what I would get out of something, even something, let's not even say like love or relationship, like a work of art or something. Like I tend to romanticize things. I tend to romanticize relationships and, romanticize a love story or something. I don't know. I mean, I maybe there is just something, like you said, maybe it's some type of either genetic or maybe some type of upbringing thing that's instilled in you toward this more kind of sensitive proclivities, like these kind of a heightened sense of I don't know, those sorts of feelings, or I mean, well, I don't know. Yeah.
I certainly don't want to discount that there are people who are on different wavelengths, and have different intelligences and things like that. I wonder though, it's like this, like being a romantic, I think is like, like kind of like wanting to invest, give some drama and some gravitas to whatever it is that you're, like to your life and to life in general. And I think that for some people, like they're very like, like there's some very grounded people, I think, who are very like comfortable and, like just kind of day-to-day life or in their, and like whatever their path, it's kind of enough for them on an emotional level, And I think there's some people who do have like a little bit more need to get, like to seek a higher emotional register outside of themselves, And I see that with Romeo for sure.
Yeah.
I see him like trying to like, and this is the beauty of Shakespeare, where it's like so much of it I feel that I get out of Shakespeare, and that's why I love The Tempest. I would say that's my favorite play. It's like his question is kind of like, well, where does drama come from? Where does drama come from? And I think, the answer is kind of like, well, it comes from the dramatist. And in this case, Romeo is kind of like the dramatist of his world, and that proves to be kind of in both his romanticizing his surroundings and his experience and the experience of others, but also in so doing and making this and putting all this into motion, real drama comes from it. A conflict, a love story, but also, some tragedy, and it's all kind of he's engineering it from his very heart. He's like making it all happen from his very heart.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I'm saying. I don't know what that means exactly, but I do feel like that is I find that to be kind of a common theme of when I read Shakespeare, and I'm seeing that with Romeo. Like he's the author. He's the author of these events by being so sensitive, and he's engineering them just purely from his I guess you just call it kind of his artistic temperament.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm trying to get at too, is that, yeah, like what makes an artistic what separates the kind of, and I mean, I don't know, but I'm just like, yeah, like the sensitive young man who's more inclined to do that. I wonder if you say like it is like a way to rationalize or dramatize something that is, everyday occurring type thing, like it is kind of like a way to do that. But then like what stops other people from doing, like why is it because of women? Like this is another one where I don't think we're going to have a definitive answer, but I want your thoughts on this, man. Like, that's kind of like, is it because of women that a sensitive young man would be more drawn to the kind of what some would call the more feminine side of the spectrum? Like,
Yeah.
is it to get laid, or then like as opposed to kind of the more masculine side of the spectrum, where you're kind of winning a conquest, or like stabbing somebody with a sword to impress a girl? You're like trying to read Shakespeare, to impress a girl, or you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Well, I don't want to. I feel like the thing is that my intention is not to like disparage um anybody at all.
oh no,
But I
yeah,
do feel like the artistic temperament comes from. It could certainly come from somebody look, looking out at the world, really young and vulnerable eyes, and
yeah,
being like, I can't.
yeah,
Okay, I can't compete on this level. Like, I'm not going to be this type. Like, I'm not going to be able to be that type of person and be sexually successful, romantically successful, or just even successful. Like, I'm not gonna, yeah, like, I'm not gonna be a soccer player. And so then it's like, well, what other options do I have? And maybe it's to be and thank God, it's to be a creative person. It's to be somebody who's I'm actually going to get to know, because then over time, like, I do feel like the artistic temperament in men is closer to women.
yeah.
Like, they might not have like this like like 4D chess understanding of the female psychology, but they're just closer to the feminine and the things that women do and are drawn to naturally, and that becomes useful. It also becomes useful, and that's and I mean, the thing is that ultimately I don't think that it so much matters, like, whether it comes from that or if it's like a gift from God. And I mean, there's a question, I think, in my opinion, also, like, well, where do gifts from God come from, and like, how are they actually, how does God actually make those things happen? It's less interesting to me to think, oh, I was born with it, than to think I was put on this earth, and then through the course of events, this is how I developed this gift, or this, we're calling it a temperament. And I think that's a good word for it. And like, I think that, that's one way of looking at it and saying, like, well, God really kind of has his own style. But I think, yeah, I mean, I think, who knows, like, Shakespeare, was ultimately, like, he was an entertainer, and I don't know what his romantic life was like at all, but, it was probably pretty decent.
Yeah, dude.
And like, if you can make, and I mean, there's all kinds of different strategies that there's all kinds of different strategies that men develop, to be, I think, to be successful with women. I think it's kind of undeniable that men are more obsessed with women than women are with men.
Oh,
What do you
yeah.
think about that? What do you think about that?
100%. Yes, I think that's 100% the case, and I wonder if that is biologically ingrained. Like, that's what I mean, because all men have this kind of thing, but then, like, it's more pronounced, like you said, more of a temperament, more prominent temperament in some men other than others. Kind of the romantic, sad emo boys, right? The art school boys. The everybody knows who we're talking about. Yeah.
God,
What?
like people who to make a choice, or naturally gravitate towards, like, being funny. Like, when I think about, like, a Chris Farley or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, kind of a fat, like a fat kid. And it's like, how am I going to? In fact, it's really just like, it's not even just a question about, like, how am I going to attract women. It's like, how am I going to make my way through this world as a man? Like,
Right.
what am I going to do? How am I going to do it? Like, I'm kind of, like, I'm kind of sensitive. I'm kind of afraid of conflict, and, I'm small or whatever. So I got to do this, or, like, I'm a fat kid, and, like, So what am I going to do? Oh, I know what I'll do. I'll be funny, and I'll
Right.
make everyone laugh,
Right.
and I'll kind of like become valuable that way. And I do think that men are incomplete and women are complete. That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah.
They're born complete. They have everything they need. Um, and they have everything they need, and that's enough for them to be taken care of, essentially. And then for a man, it's a little bit tougher. It's like, and don't get me wrong, like women are very vulnerable. Women are very vulnerable, and in a way that men are not. But but a man has to kind of be like, what am I going to do? How am I going to make my way through this world? How am I going to be valuable? How am I going to prove myself? And I do think that I think that some men take a look at their like inherent resources and some of the things that maybe they're attracted to, and where that comes from, I don't know. And they say, okay, that's what I'm going to do. That's how I'm going to make my way through this world.
Yeah.
And I mean, in Romeo, he's kind of surrounded by violence and violent men, and he chooses love and peace, and he becomes almost, in the friar, I think, kind of sees in him an instrument of peace.
Yeah.
But what ends up happening is unfortunate, very unfortunate.
Yeah, and there's even that line, I think, when he's talking to somebody, right? He's like, "Peace, cousin, peace."
Yeah,
Romeo is almost like the peacemaker, and even Mercutio's death, he's like the one that's trying to break it up and then causes the death, etc. But
yeah,
I do want to touch on the first time he sees Juliet, because this is one of the most romantic parts. I think this, in the balcony scene, and the kind of that is the bread and butter of the hopeless romantic emo boy, where this is Act 1, Scene 5, kind of they're at the party. He sees Juliet and he turns to a serving man. He said, What lady's that which doth enrich the hand of yonder knight? And the serving man says, I know not, sir. And then Romeo says, Oh, she doth teach the torches to burn bright. It seems she hangs upon the cheek of night as a rich jewel in an Ethiopi's ear. Beauty too rich for use, for earth too dear. And I mean, it goes on, so shows a snowy dove trooping with crows as yonder lady o'er her fellows shows. The measure done, I'll watch her place of stand, and touching hers, make blessed my rude hand. Did my heart till now, I forswear it, sight. For I never saw true beauty till this night. And that's like the big thing. That's like his first seeing Juliet.
yes,
And just kind of that longing that strikes him automatically. And obviously it's for the beauty, right? Like the physical beauty at first.
yeah,
But then he immediately kind of falls for her in this way. It's just kind of so romantic. It's so romantic. I couldn't help but kind of be charmed by it when I was reading through here and like pull it out to be like, all right, Brendan, like
yeah.
this is romantic boy shit right here. Like this
Oh,
tendency
absolutely.
to just go directly into this. Oh my God, she makes the torches burn bright, right? Or she teach the torches to burn bright. She's brighter than they are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's amazing. Um, well, I think what I see in this is like, so Romeo sees the world. I mean, his ability to articulate this and to be able to see it in this kind of like psychedelic way. That's kind of like how that's kind of like what the beauty of like the poet is or the artist is that like you can see the world in this really intense way and see like you can see a woman as a rich jewel. You don't just see her as a woman. And to be able to put it in those terms, that's pretty amazing. Yeah, yeah, I would say that that's what I kind of got out of that. And and I don't know what and he's able to like use this ability to like the sensitivity. He's able to like speak to Juliet in this way, take her hand and speak to her in this, really powerful and like, I don't want to say not flowery, but just like descriptive way.
Oh yeah.
And he's into him, right away too.
That too, because we talked a lot so far about the male perspective, but I think Juliet kind of gives the female love kind of hopeless romantic perspective too, Like there is like Juliet's kind of when she's after they touch hands and whatever, they speak for the first time and she's telling the nurse to like go ask his name. If he be married, my grave is like to be my wedding bed.
Yeah, she's very connected to like Juliet's very connected to like this idea of like love unto death,
Yeah, love and hate. Yeah.
Yeah.
The extremes.
That too. Yeah.
She says, yeah, she's my only when the nurse returns and says his name is Romeo and a Montague, the only son of your great enemy. Juliet, to herself, because Shakespeare famously had these kind of solo little monologues or soliloquies to the audience. My only love sprung from my only hate, too early seen unknown and known too late. Prodigious birth of love it is to me that I must love a loathed enemy.
Yes. And, but I feel like that's very, like teenage girls it can be very extreme, I think,
Oh, yeah.
And so that's that's part of it. I don't know, that's funny, Andrew. I mean, like very much this time around I was very conscious of the fact that they were just like young kids, like young people experiencing this really powerful drug,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's when that I think evolutionarily makes sense, like I think classically, we experience love most intensely when we're teenagers, and that's kind of like I think historically prior to modern society when people would just basically like start figuring out who the hell they were going to marry and have kids with,
Yeah. Were you an intense relationship guy in those the teenage years?
Okay, so that's a great question, Andrew, and I'll explain. I was when I was like around age 15. I had my first girlfriend. She was a couple years older than I was. She was a senior and I was a sophomore in high school, and I kind of needed that. I kind of needed like this older girl with confidence to like come on to me, because I just like didn't know how to make it happen for myself in a way. And once that happened, I was like really, really in love with this girl that I was dating at the time. That it lasted for like, honestly, Andrew, like 4 weeks probably, and it was like an absolute cringe fest on my part from start to finish. Like I was really intense. I was really into her. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and she backed off like very quickly and almost immediately because I was just too intense. And once that happened, I was kind of broken up about it. I talked to my dad about it, and I was like, Dad, it's hard for me to let go. Like, I think I even said, like, it's hard for me to let go, of what we had. And my dad was like, well, what? He was like, well, what did you have? And basically, he instructed me. In fact, and I took it more as a command, to quote, this is a quote now, play the field. And that I did, and that I really did not become I was not like a super intense relationship guy in high school. I was very much like, I guess you could say playing the field, But then when I was 18, I dated this girl. She was a little bit younger than I was. Problematic, I know. Forgive me. I didn't know better. And I was going to go away to college, and she was not. And I kind of had that sense of like, we're doomed, And it really, really, Andrew, affected me greatly. it deeply affected me. I was very, very upset and very existential about it, you know. And yeah, um, and so I think I was capable of some really deep feelings for people, and thinking about it a lot and being obsessed with it. My dad briefly, my dad was able to intervene during the and keep me away from that during like the meat of my high school years, which was probably for the better, because I was able to focus on other things. I was a musician, and so I really kind of like was able to focus on that. Um, but yeah, I think naturally I was I was very romantic and very deep into whoever I was into for whatever for whatever the reason.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. What about you? I'd be interested here.
Well, for me, I got into a relationship kind of like eighth grade,
Nice.
where I was dating this girl, and it was middle school relationship, uh,
Yeah.
but also like we were together pretty much all of high school, so we were
Wow.
together for a while, like through high school and stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Like
yeah,
till the high school?
till when?
Till the end of high school? Like, did you graduate?
Basically, yeah,
Wow. Wow, that's
basically.
crazy.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know. I mean, it was always, I mean, yeah, it was definitely like passionate, but it was also, young.
Hmm.
But I think it definitely, like, I, I've always kind of been a relationship type of guy. Like, that
Yeah.
I'm more comfortable with that
Hmm.
than I am with any. I mean, there were times in my life, where I was not doing, the relationship guy thing, but it was also like, I don't know, it just always felt I like that more. I like, I'm the type of person that I don't like surface level. Fine, I'll do small talk with a stranger or something, but I like to get to it. Like, kind of, okay, we can talk about the weather and all that kind of shit, but like what I want to talk about is, yeah, this type of shit. Like, I like deep connections. Like, I get a lot of meaning out of that, and not just romantic either, but with friends and all of that, kind of the friend level and stuff like that. I like intimate relationships.
Sure.
It's just always been something that I like those more than I like any type of surface level kind of relationship. And I don't know, I've just always been prone to this idea of, yeah, like, it's gonna sound stupid, but like, yeah, I'm not quite like other guys. Yeah, like, I'm not.
Nice.
And it's not even like I tried to do that or anything, or that was like a big part of my who I was, to tell myself that, like, oh, I'm not like them. It was just something that would constantly be shoved in my face over and over again, kind of like, yeah, like we'd all go see a movie together, your boys, whatever, high school, middle school, even college, even now, and I would just get something out of it like completely different than they would, like it would just be, I mean, I'd still notice what they noticed, like, oh, the girl's tits or whatever, of course, like, I'm still
Yeah,
very
yeah.
much into tits, but like, I'm like, yeah, but like, he died for her, or like, did you not like feel those prickles on your arms when that scene was happening? And most of them didn't. No, they didn't feel those prickles on their arms when that scene was happening. So that, I mean, that's why I asked you earlier, just because something I always think about, or just kind of, and I will say, no, not like that. Like, not that like I've never dated anyone that was like obsessed with me or something after a breakup or anything like that. But like, yeah, I'm not quite like anybody else like you're gonna meet in that, at least in terms of that, like, relationships or my romantic disposition.
Hmm.
Um, And it's not always entirely true either, because I've come across people, especially in the internet age, where you can be connected to strangers on the internet, even
Yeah.
and have connections, things in common and stuff. And so there's other people like me, I think, with that kind of disposition. But I that's why I'm just curious about it. Like, I think there is that kind of. I don't know if I'm just more sensitive to it, or what it was, or what caused me to be this way, or see a different way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think when it comes to that kind of thing, um, I was very much obsessed with romantic longing from a very early age.
Yeah.
And I think I used it.
In the
Um,
Romeo sense too, right? Like,
yeah,
kind of, yeah.
yeah, yeah, and so but and I don't know necessarily where it came from. But but I was also not someone who, um, I didn't, to me, it was more of a thing, like a private thing, that that I would experience this like longing kind of from a distance, and Romeo is experiencing that at the beginning of the play, but then then he actually kind of acts on it, and just kind of goes after what he wants. And earlier on, I wasn't really like that per se. Um, but yeah, I mean, I would spend a lot of time, like from a very early age, like maybe like third grade or fourth grade, or maybe
Yeah.
even earlier than that. Now that I think about it, like kind of like privately uh, obsessing over that kind of thing, and then telling my friends about it.
Did you
Yeah,
did you ever like, I remember in fifth grade, for Valentine's Day, I gave this girl that I had a crush on a box of chocolates, like, in school. Like,
hell,
in school. And of course, she didn't like me, like,
no, I
so
see.
it was like a big, like, it was a formative moment for me in my youth, for sure. And I was,
Yeah,
of course, embarrassed when I was rejected.
yeah,
She did accept it, but it was also like, uh, in my youth, yeah, like when you're doing that, with the kind of, yeah, she was not into me.
right.
Uh,
Too
so it was
bad.
an embarrassing moment for sure when I was a little, like, 9, 10 year old,
Yes.
being like, I'm Romeo and in love with this woman, or this young girl at the time when I was a young man.
Yeah. Okay. Now that you mention it, when I was in when I was in fourth grade,
Right,
there
like,
was a
you would do, like, they would make you make those little Valentine bags in school and shit,
yeah.
and you'd give each other Valentines. I took a lot of pride in that. Like, and I would give special ones to the girls I liked.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know. Here's just one memory I have. Fourth grade, so this would have been like um 19 like 96 maybe. And I had the internet at my house like for early. And I printed off like an entire like lyric book of like Nirvana lyrics, and like stapled it together, and then gave it to this girl that I liked because I knew that she
Yes.
knew who Nirvana was. And she was like very public about like it being weird and not being into me, but then she would also talk to me on the phone outside of school. And that was my first experience of like kind of like a girl playing on my phone a little bit, and like accepting my attention, but not agreeing to be my girlfriend.
Were you a mixtape guy? Were you handing out mixed CDs, burned CDs in middle school and stuff? I did that. Same thing with lyrics. You said printed lyrics. I gave a girl
Yeah.
in, like, sixth grade, like, a CD I burned for her with, like, printed out lyrics to accompany it. like
Nice.
like yeah, stapled together like that. Those
Yeah.
romantic boys, dude. That's what I mean. Like, were you the only boy doing that? And you're,
Seemingly.
yeah, exactly, right. So was
Okay.
I.
Okay. Okay. So I will say this: I was the most romantic boy in school for the
Yes,
time,
yes.
for the longest time.
For me, it
Oh,
was always like always in almost every situation. I would find myself being like, "You guys don't, nobody else is all right." You know.
yeah. Well, I think part of it was that like maybe they had like an inherent understanding that like you know I don't know, Andrew. I mean, do women like that kind of thing, or do they like being like teased and like kind of you know? Do you see what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
I didn't understand that like you had to kind of be a little like playful and mean maybe, and that would have been better. I wasn't like that at all. I wouldn't have liked like it wouldn't have been something that I would have been really drawn to doing really.
Well, it depends too. I think at that age, I think they definitely like the attention and they definitely like the gesture. When you were a musician, you write a song for a girl or play it to her, or like, even if you're just hanging out at a house party or something, you start like performing whatever. I think they like that. But I think there's also different, times in your life as well. So when somebody in middle school, they probably just are flattered by the attention, even if they're not attracted to you or anything.
Yeah.
They like that. But I remember, what was that dumb Gerard Butler movie or something, the Ugly Truth? Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like a rom-com, like in the early
No.
2000s, where he plays this kind of raunchy radio host guy that like, helps men like fuck women, like kind of, and he falls in love with this little feminist girl, and that's the plot. Katherine Heigl, I think, plays the feminist girl who was smoking hot, especially in that movie. She was like her peak of her career.
No.
She was like just coming off Grey's Anatomy or something, I think. And anyway, it was like there's a scene in that where he's talking to his little nephew who's like 13, and he's like obsessed with this girl. And his nephew's like, "But you told me to be mean to girls." And he's like, "No." He's like, "I told you to be mean to 25-year-old girls who think they're the hottest thing on earth." He's like, "Don't be mean to the 13-year-old girl you're trying to ask out to the dance." Like, like, and I think there's some truth to that. So like when in the 25, when you're an adult, especially if you're
Yeah.
going for somebody out of your league or something, which I encourage everybody to do, go for it, right? Why not? But just like there's a different time for different measures in terms of like the romantic kind of how you would get laid as an adult is not what you were doing when you're like in middle school and stuff, like making mixed burning CDs for your crush and being like, "This is about us," like, "This is about us. This
Yeah.
is our song."
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that is because so like fourth grade, I was putting the moves on this girl. She might have been out of my league, maybe not. I don't know. But then in fifth grade, I had a little bit of an issue, like with some other kids in school. Kind of, I guess you would use the word bullying me, and it kind of fucked me up and made me feel like I was actually like a huge nerd. And that affected my self-confidence from like fifth grade until I was in high school. And then when I was in high school, I was very fortunate, Andrew, to go to an small arts high school. And by that point, and once I had my first girlfriend when I was 15 and she was older, like my confidence just kind of like went through the roof.
Right.
I wasn't afraid to like I felt like, oh, I can put the moves on any girl and she'll go for it. And that's kind of how it went for me. But I wish that I'd been a little bit more aggressive when I was like a middle school. Just for my own. Like it would have made it a better experience than it was. It was like my experience in middle school was basically like being like it was like being on like the Cumtown podcast like 24/7.
Oh yeah.
It's like yeah,
Jackass era, and
yeah.
yeah,
Oh, Jackass era. Yes, exactly.
and yeah, ball taps and
Sure, sure. Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah.
Um, what? Yeah. What's your favorite rom-com?
Ooh, I have a couple, and I have a couple that make me very teary-eyed. You know, like
Yeah, sure.
The Notebook is one, that's for sure. Um, I like what?
Oh, interesting. I have not. I don't think I've not seen The Notebook, but I've heard people describe it to me.
And you know the memes and all that. Yeah, it dude, it's people clown on it, but it is such a love story, and it's in the vein of Romeo and Juliet. In that, you know, as every love story that's come after this has been. And really, when I was in grad school, I took a great course called Shakespeare Sources, where we were talking about the source material, the stories that came before Shakespeare's stories, you know,
Oh, that's
where
interesting.
he had some, you know, there were definitely stories like this that Shakespeare was taking from, you know, and making
Yeah,
them better. Like when you read them back to back, Shakespeare's were just better than the other ones. That's why he's
yeah.
remembered and they aren't. Yeah, because his were just
From
better. But yeah, there was a lot of that. There was a lot of kind of, I don't know. And
yeah, yeah. Have you ever seen You've Got Mail?
yeah, I have, but a long time ago when it came out with Tom Hanks, and it's very much like When Harry Met Sally a little bit, right?
Well, it's it's like it's about these people who are like enemies in like basically like business rivals in a sense in real life. Like Tom Hanks is like a he owns like he's like the CEO of like a Barnes and Noble style corporate bookstore, and Meg Ryan is the owner of like a local bookstore.
And they start
And
chatting, right, online, and
yeah, but they don't know that it's them.
yeah,
Yeah, but they're also both in relationships at the time, which I don't know how I feel about that. But then again, they're not married, but they are kind of like emotionally cheating on their partners online. And then they kind of find out over the course of the movie, that it's that that they're that because they also are, even though they're rivals and enemies in real life, they also start to fall for each other in real life as well.
right,
And so by the time that they are, the rubber's going to meet the road and they're going to meet each other from the internet, they're kind of hoping that it's going to be them. And it's a sweet story. It's a
dude.
sweet.
I love those types of things, and I like it. I get immense pleasure out of being moved to tears by a love
Yeah.
story. I mean,
So,
any story, any tragedy, but love stories in particular, that chill that comes over you when you're witnessing something that's well done, and you're like, whether it be in the play like this, if you had a great cast doing it perfectly, and then if, in a movie or something like that, like I said, The Notebook, there's certain scenes, It's a Wonderful Life, like,
oh God.
like, there are scenes in that where I am just, and it's every single time I watch it, I cannot not, like, I can't not cry watching it. And it's like, I don't know why that is. I mean, I do know why it is. It's because I'm overwhelmed by like what's being portrayed in front of me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it's always those very passionate scenes that, I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I mean, yeah, It's a Wonderful Life's the great example of it, where I think, Jimmy Stewart in that movie he's trying to fight his romantic sensibilities. That's part of the plot, at least in the beginning, right? Where he's trying to go be an adventurer. He's trying to go leave town and go on an adventure, right? And be his own man. And he keeps getting
Right.
sucked back in. And that scene when his buddy's calling him and telling him to invest in the plastics
Yeah.
factory, and they're
Yes.
getting closer and closer together on screen, and they're like all each have the phone, they're like both listening into the phone, so they're getting closer and closer to one another. And
Yeah.
he's like, you tell him that's a chance of a lifetime, and she kind of looks at him and is like, he says it's the chance of a lifetime, and they just drop the phone and he grabs her. He's like, now you listen to me. You understand? He's like, I don't want any plastics and I don't want any ground floors. And I'm leaving tomorrow, you understand? I'm never getting married, ever. And then they just start like kissing each other. Like even just thinking about it now, like I get that kind of chill like over me, like the kind of like goose pimples come through. And I don't know why I've just always been attuned to a scene like that, to a passionate exchange like that, to feelings like that, whether in art or real life or anything like it, you know, like there's just immense, I don't know why, man. I don't know why, but I've just always been more sensitive to it than almost anyone I've met. And it's not like I've met everybody in the world, listeners. So it's not like I'm trying to say, oh, I'm this special little boy. But you know, it's just. Well,
it's good to be in touch with feelings like that. I'm moved by I don't know, you know, like I don't know, sports movies move me quite a bit. Yeah,
yes,
they move me quite a bit.
Rudy.
And, what's that?
Rudy?
Yeah, Rudy, exactly. Something
Remember
like that.
the Titans was big when we were kids?
Yeah.
That's not as much as like a tragic, but there's some, yeah. But Rudy, kind of the death.
Yeah. But I mean, but also like the triumph of like the underdog is always like, really kind of moves me. You know, speaking of It's a Wonderful Life, I had Frank Capra's biographer on my show.
Right, I saw that. Yeah.
Right, and he told he had an interesting story about writing Frank Capra's biography, but you know, Anyway, I don't want to get into it, but apparently, like, you know, Frank Capra was, you know, like they kind of thought of him as like this like kind of populist, everyman filmmaker, but he was actually like a very like conservative capitalist man who also was an informant during the Red Scare, like was like ratting out people for being communists. Yeah. But that doesn't. I mean, I don't say that to say, because It's a Wonderful Life. Like, honestly, Andrew, you're gonna think this is kind of weird, but I hadn't seen It's a Wonderful Life until this last Christmas.
Oh wow! Yeah.
And it was like a very amazing and moving experience. And I just thought it was wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
What do you want, Mary? You want the moon? Just say the word, and I'll throw a lasso around it. Pull it down.
You do a pretty good Stewart.
Dude, I've seen almost every Jimmy Stewart movie. I loved Stewart. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you were talking. Yeah, well, that's right. We were talking about
The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
That's another one. I mean, it doesn't have anything to do with this one, but I mean, the overall theme of that kind of, it's not as moving kind of passionately, like, you know, I wouldn't be moved to tears of that movie, but just the overall theme, right? When the legend becomes fact, print the legend.
Yeah.
The story, the romance around it is what matters more than the fact, the truth, whatever it is. People are, oh, what is true? Fuck what is true. What feels true? What do you know is absolutely real as you're feeling it inside of you? You know, that kind of, oh yeah, dude. Love Stewart. Love it. I think people clown on him too, because he did kind of become a caricature towards the end, but he was just so famous, you know, like, but yeah, dude, there's so many lines in that It's a Wonderful Life, dude, that are some of the most romantic kind of love stuff. Even just the way Stewart would play like a desperate man, I think was just so good. That, you know, another scene that always gets me in It's a Wonderful Life, dude, when he loses everything right after and Potter finds that money. And he goes to Potter, the man he can't stand, who hates him, and he's begging him for money, like a loan, because he lost that money.
Sure.
And he comes back to the house, right? And he blows up on the family, like in that kind of. But right before he blows up and like not turns over the table, like that scene when he walks in and his daughter's playing the piano, and his son comes up to him, who's like 3 years old or whatever, like. And he kind of has this tinsel, like handfuls of tinsel, because they're decorating the tree. And he just comes up to him, and Jimmy Stewart just grabs him and just like holds him, just like squeezes him like as hard as he can, and just like kissing his head and like starting to cry. And the kid has no idea why, you know, the kid's trying to put tinsel on his head because he doesn't understand it. And it's just like things like that would just like get me very choked up, like as soon as I see it. Or even at the end, like when everybody's dumping that money on the table, like even that, like my brother George, the richest man in the world, like kind of that, I feel it. Like I said, the goose pimples,
Yeah.
dude, like the kind of, just thinking about it gets me that kind of, I don't know. I've just always been just like an emotional, sensitive person, dude. Like just a sensitive young man. Not so young anymore, but
Well, yeah, well, I mean, just the fact that it's like about, I don't know. There's the thing that moved me is that it was like this guy didn't understand his place in the world. Like he didn't
right,
understand his role in God's universe, you know, and it, his life didn't turn out the way that he wanted it to turn out. You know, like his will, but then, you know, an angel is sent to save his life and show him, by the way, like, you know, this is God, you know, like, you know, you're an instrument of God's will, you know, and like his understanding of his place in the world was changed, and his will to live was restored, and it saved his life. And that's, you know, I think if anybody's ever gone through like a dark time in their life, or, you know, God, I mean, that how beautiful would that be to reframe, like to have a new understanding of like who you are and what your role is in the world, you know, like because we want to believe that we have a role, I think, in the world, I guess I would say, you know,
you
and
know,
that's what moved me.
I think the other, people shit on that movie too. One, because it's so popular, and two, just because it's so good. I think people try to, denigrate it. But another reason I think they do is because it's very masculine. And what I mean by that is that, the kind of most men live lives of quiet desperation type idea,
Yes.
where he wanted something else and he never got it. And it and it is just this thing that but he got something else, and he didn't quite realize that. But I still think that there's it's this internal struggle within every kind of man, more specifically, but I'm not saying this doesn't happen for women or anybody else, but it just specifically men that are just kind of, you want something and then you don't get it and you're failing, and then you kind of lose track of everything else. Maybe it's a passion thing, maybe it's because even George in that movie, he wants this romantic, adventurous life, like seeing the world, becoming some big architect, like doing something with his life, and he feels like he got that taken from him, or I don't know, duty called, or he had to watch his brother get these he didn't get to be a war hero, he didn't get to travel, he didn't even get to serve because of his fucking ear that got hurt when he saved his brother when he was a kid. I don't know, there's just something desperate in a lot of men.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that movie really captures that. And then it actually even gives you a happy ending with that, like gives you a satisfaction and shows you that actually you should be grateful, kind of, message or whatever. Look around you and look at all this greatness around you that you've helped create. And I think people don't like that, maybe because it is so masculine. I don't know where I'm going with that, but
Well, I do think that people have a hard time appreciating their lives as they are. Like
Yeah.
that's its inherent difficulty of life, and that it actually takes like some practice and work. And it's an important thing to I think it's like so important to focus on what you have, and instead of what you don't have. And it's like such a simple message, and I think that a lot of people, like, they don't even want to believe that that's true. They don't even want to believe that it's true. Yeah. Have you ever seen Rear Window?
oh yeah,
Okay, nice. What about Vertigo?
oh yeah.
Jimmy Stewart. Okay.
I love Rear
That,
Window too, because I saw it when I was a kid, and it was like one of my favorites.
nice.
I,
Nice. Yeah.
I just the voyeurism, the spying, the
Hmm.
the I still love that. I just moved recently, but like I lived in an apartment for many years before this, and what I would always do is I'd always pay attention to. I wasn't like just like staring out the window looking for shit, but I'd always be paying attention to what was happening, like out in like the all these people living in this building,
Yeah.
and what was going on with it. And I think that's romantic too, like a romantic sense of the world, kind of voyeuristically observing it and these different things, like the divorced mom that lived down the hall, like when her boyfriend would come pick her up, like because I'd hear his fucking car, like like and I'd be like, oh yeah, and you start to just like these little stories, this little kind of rear window, you start to construct these things.
Yes.
uh
Yes.
yeah, I love
Yeah.
that.
At the last apartment that I lived at, there was this guy who I would see, and he would walk around um, the apartment complex, and he was like, he was like this kind of, he was maybe like 6 feet tall, and he had like long dark hair, and he had kind of like he was not in super great shape or anything, but he had kind of like a dad bod or whatever, but he didn't care. He would walk around the apartment complex on his cell phone, on speaker, and be in sandals and jeans and no shirt, and he would walk around, and you could hear him talking, and you could just tell from the conversations that he was having that he was going through a separation that was sounded like it was headed towards divorce,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, and it was always fascinating to like witness him pacing around like the grounds of the apartment complex, like walking with his shirt off. You know, um, you're probably familiar with this like very much here in Phoenix, and I bet it's true in Las Vegas. Is like the apartment complexes aren't like these enclosed buildings, but rather like kind of open concept. And
Yeah,
there's like
breezeways, like
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And so I could just like listen to this guy talking, and you could hear that he was like really frustrated um, with his wife, and it sounded like she wasn't as interested in like getting things back together as he was, which is a sad story. But um, anyway, that guy was interesting, but also his aesthetic of like kind of like this long haired guy with no shirt on and a jeans and sandals.
Yeah, on like speakerphone walking around, like
Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
for sure. Yeah, man. Um,
There's definitely like, and I mean the reason this is a long way to get to it, but I just mean like the kind of the balcony scene in Romeo and
yeah,
Juliet is one obviously the most famous scene in the entire, maybe history of literature,
sure.
is that kind of balcony scene. Romeo kind of watching the light as he's coming out of the tower that he knows Juliet is in, where he kind of comes out of the dark, right? The line is, "But soft what light through yonder window breaks," is the most famous line in the entire play. It is the east and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon. Absolutely just unbelievable.
Yeah, for sure.
Just kind of, and I think just like there's something inherently romantic about a tower, about a balcony, going to somebody's window and shouting up to them. Marlon Brando in the Streetcar
Yes.
Named Desire, just shouting up to them, say anything. John Cusack holding that boombox, like just kind of there's something sneaky about it. One, right? The kind of high school young love when you're sneaking in and out of each other's rooms and stuff like that. All of that. There's just something so romantic about towers going up into a tower, like climbing a tower to get to this girl. I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
Did you ever like sneak your girlfriend into your house or out of your house, or you ever sneak out? Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes. And it was always like kind of a romantic thing, right? Like the kind of passionate thing that was I me. She speaks, oh speak again, bright angel, for thou art as glorious to this night, being over my head as his winged messenger of heaven. An angel. Just unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. Um well, and the thing that amazes me is like from the Baz Luhrmann adaptation is like how fresh he was able to make all of this material with like I mean and so he made like everything that he did in that film was like a choice. There was nothing like kind of left outside of his like it wasn't like left to chance, or
Right.
just, oh, that's there, let's just use that, you know. um I don't know, how did that movie strike you this time around?
What I actually liked it more this time around than I did previously. And I'm not a huge Lerman guy, but one thing I think he did that makes that version from 96 hold up so well,
Yeah.
the fact that they kept all of the dialogue the same, that all of the dialogue was the kind of Shakespearean English,
Yeah.
keeping that allowed him to kind of do so much wild stuff with the kind of modernizing it in other ways while keeping that kind of dialogue is what makes that movie still hold up today. I think if they had modernized the language or told the story, the kind of same Romeo and Juliet story, but didn't use the Shakespearean language, it wouldn't hold up. It would be corny. It would be, you watch it now, I think, and it would be like, some of those choices, like you said, even in the beginning, like kind of Jamie Kennedy in the beginning.
Yeah.
Do you bite your thumb at me, sir? Like, yes, I
It's
bite
very,
my thumb, but not at you.
it's very I mean, like, it's extremely 90s.
Oh, the Hawaiian shirts.
Yeah. But I
Yeah,
think all this, like kind of like the television, starting and ending with television, and making it kind of about, like in many ways I felt like it was about LA as seen through television, helicopters, and also just like the idea of like helicopters, police helicopters buzzing around Los Angeles, because it's like kind of fresh off of the LA riots, of the early 90s, and OJ, and all of that stuff. I felt like that was all there, but you're right in that keeping the dialogue, Shakespeare's dialogue, definitely helps to ground it in something
right.
more timeless. But it's nice to see something that also, reminds me of that time period, and was immersed in that time period in a way like that other stuff kind of isn't. And the thing that I didn't get when I was a kid was that, like, how constructed it was, and how much costume and color and set and size there is to that movie.
Yeah,
And that was the way to go. I mean, that was the way
yeah,
to go, the way to make it interesting to a new audience, to young people. And I mean, there's really like, and I was shocked because, back in the day, I didn't really recognize who some of these other players were that were in the film. Um, but I mean, what raw material he had to work with, like with Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes as well, who was really kind of like the archetypal 90s girl, and she was extremely young,
yeah.
and very, very talented for being so, like, I don't even know, she probably was like 15, I think, maybe in that movie. Like the actress was 15. You know.
Yeah, and I think the way that Luhrmann seemed to pay special attention to the music, like
Yes.
when they're talking back and forth, even when he's doing the banter, especially with the banter between like Romeo and Mercutio and all like the group of friends, the back and forth, that's very kind of their music, they're rhyming each other's lines, like they're almost like completing these kind of, like that's such an essential part of it. And I think a lot of people tend to like for example in the Zeffirelli version there isn't as much attention paid to that in terms of like how the lines rhyme and bounce off one another. There's a rhythm to the entire play from the very beginning, and like there's this thing that people do when they're acting Shakespeare is they try to over dramatize the lines, you know.
Yeah.
And that very often messes up that rhythm because you're trying to over dramatize it, to emphasize it, you know, and give like a spin on it, because this has been done to death. Actors love doing this, but I think the other reason actors love doing it is because of that, because it forces you to work with everybody else in the scene like so seamlessly with that sound, is you have to hit the mark almost, but with your speech, like with the dialogue you're performing, and also your mark on the stage or where the movie or whatever you're performing it in. And yeah, there's just, and you know, sometimes that's just maturity, I think, for terms of like an actor as an artist, that's just like maturity, understanding that. But like, you know, actors love doing Shakespeare because I think it gives them that opportunity to, I don't know, just like do something that you can only do through a Shakespearean kind of back and forth, the Shakespearean dialogue, the monologue, the soliloquies, the kind of self-dramatizing, the self-overhearing, as Bloom would say,
Right.
explaining to the audience your kind of psychological change and weighing the options, and most famously Hamlet, right? The kind of, is that a dagger I spy, like when he's talking to himself and he's kind of like on stage by himself during that scene. I mean, yeah, that is always huge factor. But I did.
Yeah, and I mean,
Go on.
I just want to say, like, yeah, I mean, like, it really gives an actor an opportunity to rely on the material and not have to, I mean, really do overact, I guess I would say.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know, the romantic shit, like just like little lines, like when they're at that balcony and she's like, they're talking, they're about to go away. They've kind of devised their little plan to marry each other so that they can fuck. And like she's like, Juliet calls him back, right? And she's like, oh, I've forgotten what I've called you back for. And he's just like, well, let me stand here till you remember, right? Let me stand here till thou remember it. Die hard romantic. Die hard romantic. Nothing else matters but this exact moment, this exact love. I'll stay up all night if I have to, you know, kind of thing.
Yes.
But I also wanted to ask you about Friar Lawrence. Because doing it this time, reading it this time, I started to notice, I was like, this is maybe all Friar Lawrence's fault. Like, like he devises the plan, he agrees to marry them in secret, and then he devises the plan to like fake her death, and then he devises all of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. You know, once you know, he kind of launches them on this path because you know, Romeo goes to see him, you know, after he falls for Juliet, you know, and he is at first kind of like, oh, you know, like, weren't you head over heels, like, just for Rosalind before, you know, like, what are you really, like, how serious is this? And then he sees, like I was saying before, you know, I think that he sees the possibility, I don't know, for like I said, like kind of healing the this problem that exists in the within the community between the families. Um, but then I think part of it is, now that he's set this into motion, like I think he just kind of has to finish it. Is kind of how I see it.
Yeah, and his kind of ending, like soliloquy at the end, where he explains it all to the prince and like the people and stuff. Like he's almost kind of owning up to it, like
Yes.
kind of like, oh, this was all my fault. But yeah, I was just thinking, like, he sets it up too. Like when we first kind of he agrees to do this kind of stuff, like that famous line, "These violent delights have violent ends." I think that's Act 2, Scene 5.
Yes.
And it's like after they like devise this plan, and like, okay, so he's kind of foreshadowing and setting up this kind of, it's going to be a violent end as we have this violent delight.
Do you remember there was God, I can't remember if it was the Zeffirelli one or so when Romeo goes to see him the first time and he's telling him about he's telling him about Juliet, he's like, "Holy Saint Francis, what a change is here. Is Rosalind that thou didst love so dear so soon forsaken? Young men's love then lies not truly in their hearts, but in their eyes." Like a little like pause, obviously leaving it up to us to, you know, fill in where young men's love actually lies, not in their hearts, but in their eyes. That was cool.
Another sex joke. Like there's so much sexual humor in this play too. And I think that's something that you don't pick up on when you're young in high school and they're forcing you to read it and stuff, like kind of how raunchy the play is and like how entertaining it would be to a crowd in like Elizabethan England, like with all these kind of, and I think Luhrmann really captures that with kind of, they do like crotch grabs and stuff while they're like talking about like the kind of prime my pump, like kind of
Right.
things like that. Like it's talking about their dicks.
And that line there, "These violent delights have violent ends, and in their triumph die, like fire and powder, which as they kiss consume. The sweetest honey is loathsome in its own deliciousness, and in the taste confounds the appetite. Therefore love moderately. Long love doth so. Too swift arrives, as tardy as too slow." And I think that point stands out to me in this reading, where it's like, like it's just going to burn up,
Yeah.
This is not a thing that's built to last. And also there is that kind of double meaning where it's like, he's saying this will actually end in violence, which it does do.
Yeah, and Friar Lawrence is setting it all up for everyone.
Sure is.
But yeah, I was just thinking about that, like kind of like he basically caused all of this, and then like kind of his correspondence not reaching Romeo and all that. But also like Friar Lawrence is kind of like the more of a father figure to Romeo than even like his own father.
Yes.
Like his own father kind of running away from when we first meet Romeo. What's the line? Something like, "Is that my father who left so hastily away?" or something like not wanting to see Romeo, and then he's going to Friar Lawrence for the father figure. And even like when Friar Lawrence, like after he gets banished for killing Tybalt, and he's like crying on like Friar Lawrence's floor, like Friar Lawrence is like basically calling him a bitch, like basically like, "You need to buck up, young man."
Yes. Well, it's to me that's striking at the this line at the end that the prince says, "This letter doth make good the friar's words, their course of love, the tidings of her death." And here he writes that he did buy a poison of a poor apothecary, and therewithal come to this vault to die and lie with Juliet. Where be these enemies? Capulet Montague, see what a scourge is laid upon your hate, that heaven finds means to kill your joys with love. And I, for winking at your discords too, have lost a brace of kinsmen. All are punished. That line, see what a scourge is laid upon your hate that heaven finds means to kill your joys with love. I don't know I don't know what to make of that, but it seems to me it's just saying like it was these young people's love that ultimately punishes all of you for your hate and violence. I don't know. Is that I don't I wish I had a more uh, I don't know. I don't have as sophisticated a read on some of these lines, but that does strike me.
No, I mean absolutely. I think it is, and I think it's the theme of this is the two extremes: sex and death, so life and death, and then yeah, love and hate. The kind of that's where most of the drama comes from in this play too, and in the story overall. Kind of, I mean, like I was going to ask you this kind of like the idea of like killing oneself over a woman.
Hmm.
Incredibly romantic. It's like this idea of death, but then like framing it in terms of an act of love, right? You're killing yourself as an act of love. It is the most extreme romantic kind of gesture. I don't know. I'm just thinking like Van Gogh cutting off his ear.
Hmm.
I mean, men willing to harm themselves in order to be with a woman.
Yes.
Like, just how common that is, too.
Yeah.
Or killing themselves over a woman, right? Like the Anthony Bourdain.
Oh God.
Uh,
How
it,
unfortunate.
yeah, like it just. I think that's. I don't know for a fact, but I'm just guessing here. I wouldn't be surprised if like the leading cause of like male suicide or something is something like that, like over some type of relationship,
Divorce, maybe.
divorce, or yeah, something blowing up like that. Um,
Yes. Yes. I mean, it's got to be. It's got to be. I think it's. I don't know. That thought's fortunately never never crossed my mind. Fortunately, but it's definitely got to be uh, the leading cause of male suicide. I would guess is like divorce.
yeah,
Uh,
I would. I. It's interesting too. This one psychologist was saying this that he was saying like most men that he sees that are suicidal or men that have committed suicide, he's like, it isn't because of depression or anything like this. We're like, oh, well, they're mentally ill. He's like, no, no, no. Like, they're not actually. He's like, it's actually, if you think about the perspective, it's very rational where they feel that they've reached some point that they can't escape, like they've reached some dead end that they see no way out of. He
yeah.
said that is more of the cause for male specifically, like just male suicide than anything else. It isn't like this mental health or depression. It is like actually like kind of a rational idea of I've I don't know, reached this point and there's no way out, so I'm just going to do this. And when he said that, I was just like, man, that is. Why do men do that? Why are we?
Yeah, because I mean, I mean, is there really anything that you can't get out of in some way or another, or
Right,
like
yeah.
live through? I mean, even if you're like bankrupt financially, I wonder if it has more to do with like I don't know, shame.
Yeah.
Like I made a mess of things. Like I failed. I failed as a man. You know.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think that's, speaking of It's a Wonderful Life, I think that's what George feels in the beginning of the movie.
yeah.
Because I think that's a very common thing and this is something I know I always bring up Jordan Peterson on this podcast, but just kind of, this is something I think Peterson touches on in the modern context of that kind of desperation or the failure of a man as a man. Like as a man, you feel like you didn't live up or failed at becoming what you were supposed to be, or a complete man, or whatever it is. Kind of, that's a unique sensibility to the kind of masculine disposition, and maybe the kind of more sensitive young men or romantic young men tend to, I don't know, be like more prone to that, or I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I do think like it's I think it's it seems to me like there's maybe like something that I'm like a compulsive behavior or something like that you can't stop, you can't escape. Like whether it's like like alcoholism or drug addiction, I could see that where it's just like I see no way of stopping myself from doing this. I could see that as being a reason somebody might kill themselves. I'm not saying it's a good reason. I honestly don't think there is a good reason, really, for the most part. Because I've certainly thought about it, where I was like, well, what would be the circumstances, where I would take my own life? Like, I feel like that's just not a possibility. It's not a possibility.
Be better if I'd never been born. For sure, dude. Yeah, like, what did you make of the Zeffirelli film? Did you watch them in order? I ended up watching them. Like, I read the play, and then I watched the Zeffirelli first, and then I watched the Luhrmann.
Yes.
Yeah. What did you think of it?
I really enjoyed it. I really thought the Zeffirelli was a fun way to experience this play, and I really thought the acting was really strong in the ensemble. I thought that Mercutio was phenomenal, was absolutely phenomenal, and I liked seeing it in that context. It made it, I don't know, there was something like very kind of Italian about it. I felt like, and it, yeah, I really enjoyed that. And I thought that it was interesting to see these young people from that era, handling this material. And I mean, all in all, I think that my understanding of the actual words of Shakespeare, the actual dialogue itself, was better. Because I actually saw the Romeo and Juliet, the Luhrmann Romeo and Juliet, a few weeks ago, or maybe a month or two ago. God, it couldn't have been that long ago, Andrew. It must have been really recently I'd seen it. And I was just more taking it in visually than being impressed by the dialogue. In the Zeffirelli version, really, I can see why they show it to kids in school. Like, I could understand what the play was about really well. I know that sounds, you need that, and so the Zeffirelli film really gave me an understanding. And watching it before rewatching the Luhrmann one, it actually helped me appreciate the Luhrmann one better because I understood it better.
Yeah, I think that's true for a lot of Shakespeare stuff, is that you do have to, if you don't have a good teacher that's walking you through it when you first encounter it, like, you do have to see it performed, because it does breed kind of context on top of what you were already reading, especially if you, like, haven't been trained to read this kind of language, which most people haven't when they're first encountering this. And it's like seeing the characters, their expressions, the emphasis on the certain words and things like that.
Yeah.
And even the Zeffirelli version, I mean, obviously they're separated by, 30 years almost. Between the Zeffirelli in 68 and the Luhrmann in 96, it was much more play-like, where the sets were very minimal. Like, it was, a lot of it was just that town square, kind of just that, Italian buildings and like the kind of town square. I got like kind of ballet vibes too.
Mm-hmm.
Like with
Yes,
the tights, the fight
Yes.
scenes, like the choreography of the fights. They're almost kind of dancing around one another.
True.
I just got like a vibe of that. I mean, I noticed this in a lot of movies, even earlier movies than this, usually from like the 50s, when, television and film were becoming a more dominant medium than theater and like plays and stuff. Like the reason, like old school movies and stuff that would only have like one room or whatever that they would be moving the camera in or something, sitcom style today. Well, it's because
Sure.
it came out of like the theater, where you only had this one room at a time on the set of like a stage, before we could do the elaborate kind of, fantasy set pieces or whatever. But yeah, I got a lot of that vibe. Also, shout out to the nurse in the Zeffirelli version. I looked it up. Pat Haywood plays the nurse, and just crushes it. Just crushes that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and people will recognize Michael York,
Yeah,
Tybalt from, I don't know. My first exposure to Michael York was in Austin Powers, but he's also in Cabaret, which is another great film and a great performance by him. I didn't realize that was Laurence Olivier doing the narration, and
same. Yeah,
I just saw him recently because I rewatched the Hitchcock film Rebecca that he's in, and a tremendous interpreter, cinematic interpreter. And I would assume stage, though I obviously never got to experience that. But a fantastic interpreter of Shakespeare in his own right. Direct.
He loved Shakespeare. Yeah, he put himself in all those Shakespeare movies. He even did blackface to play Othello in in that one.
Wow.
Uh,
The National Shakespeare one, the National Theater Company production.
it's whatever movie version where Olivier's. I think he directed it too, where he like cast himself as Othello and like put himself through full blackface kind of makeup.
Yes.
And people beat it up now for that, but I mean the movie itself is good. But yeah, Olivier was a huge Shakespeare. I mean, all these actors, they all like Denzel Washington, dude, huge Shakespeare dork. Like that guy loves Shakespeare. He always wants to do Shakespeare roles. And did you see the recent Macbeth by, what was it, Joel Cohen or one of the Cohen brothers?
No.
It was okay. It was a little disappointing, but Denzel stars as Macbeth in that, and then Frances McDormand. I guess it was Ethan Cohen because I think he's the one that's married to Frances McDormand.
Sure.
She played Lady Macbeth, but
Have you ever seen this movie? It's an American independent film from the 90s. It's called Scotland, PA.
no.
Oh, it's like it resets Macbeth in like some town in Pennsylvania, like contemporary town in Pennsylvania, and it's pretty clever. It doesn't, they don't use like, and who's is the inspector like the guy? So I think Christopher Walken plays like supposed to be Macduff or whatever, but I think you should check it out. I think you would like it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I was gonna say, I mean, I like that. I like when they're well done too. I mean, dude, 10 Things I Hate About You.
Great.
One of the best kind of modernizing of, The Taming of the Shrew I've ever seen. And maybe it is just because I'm a millennial and I'm nostalgic for it, but I would watch that over and over again as a kid.
Yeah, that's a great one. That's a great one. But I need to get back on a Shakespeare jag. You got me started here.
Dude, I was about to do the same, dude. Like, I'm about to try and do some more Shakespeare. I was like, man, I really want to reread King Lear now. And I have this huge thing, and I haven't read all of Shakespeare.
Have you read The Tempest?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, not in a long time though, but I've read pretty much every. I haven't read the history plays, so I haven't really read the Julius Caesar kind of plays. And I haven't read all the comedies or all the dramas, but I've read most of them. But I want to go back and like do all of them, and I have them all in this huge book here. So I was like, yeah, I want to do like a huge Shakespeare.
Jag.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, yeah. So yeah, we didn't talk about Olivia Hussey. Olivia Hussey as Juliet.
Oh yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, no issues. Really good.
Oh yeah.
Really good.
I remember seeing it in high school, like since this was the one they showed in high school, like I remember thinking she was so hot as like a 15-year-old boy watching this. Like,
yeah, I didn't want to say anything about that just because of how her age when the movie was made, but obviously incredibly beautiful, and I don't know, you know, her career was weird.
Yeah,
she wasn't like a prestige dramatic actress. She was like, I don't know. She did various things, I think. I don't want to. I mean, I certainly don't want to disparage her career. She and she's actually she's actually Hispanic. Her real name is Osuna.
Really?
Yeah. She was born in Argentina.
Damn.
And but I read this weird thing that apparently her and Leonard Whiting, who plays Romeo, actually ended up filing a lawsuit against Paramount in December of 22.
I saw that, yeah.
And I don't know if I want to comment on that or not, but it got thrown. It was dismissed.
Yeah, of course it was.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I mean, yeah, it was part of the Me Too fervor.
Right.
They were claiming some form of abuse or whatever during the sex scene in Romeo and Juliet in this version. Which, I mean, the sex scene in this, like, rewatching it, like, I thought it was hornier when I was a kid. Maybe I'm just desensitized to it now or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, you barely even see anything. Like, you see a shitload of Romeo's ass.
Yeah.
You get a little side boob. And then I'm like, oh, and they're filing a lawsuit over that? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe there was more that was cut or something that, like, they forced them to film. But I'm just thinking to myself, like, whatever, dude. Like, I mean,
I think they just saw an opportunity, to get a little easy cash, and they went for it.
Yeah.
Or whatever. That's where we are at in society. But what was I going to say? Yeah, well, Zeffirelli, he was a gay man.
I was going to say, I was going to see if he was, I didn't know, but I was like, he seemed gay from how much we linger on Romeo's ass in that scene.
He was gay,
like, is Zeffirelli gay? Probably. Like,
but he was also a very conservative Roman Catholic who supported the church's views on those kinds of issues, social issues. And so there was there was obviously, and he directed that movie Jesus of Nazareth, and like he was a devout Catholic. But it realized, oh man, I would really like to go back and watch the Zeffirelli. What was the one that he did do with Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor? He did one of those Shakespeare movies with Burton and Taylor.
Was it Taming of the Shrew, or was it?
It was. I think it was. I think you're right.
It seemed like I didn't know for a fact, but like stylistically they seemed similar. That's why it jumped out at me.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one.
But they did The Tempest too, didn't they? Together, or am I making that up? I mean, Burton and Taylor.
Right. I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm not. There's one film adaptation of The Tempest that I'm familiar with, and it's actually an incredible movie. It's called Tempest, and it takes place in modern times, and John Cassavetes plays Prospero. And I really liked it, but I'm a big John Cassavetes fan as well. So
What did
yeah,
you
man,
think of Leonard Whiting playing Romeo, his portrayal?
he was fine. You know, I mean, I wasn't like he kind of reminds me of like a modern. Like at times I was getting like, is this like Chalamet or whatever, or is this what's the other guy's name? The guy from High School Musical, I forget his name.
Zac Efron.
Yeah, I was like, I got a little Efron vibes or whatever, but I wasn't overwhelmed by his performance. Like I said, I really was more impressed with like all the other players, whether it was like you were saying, the nurse who was great. You know, I've already called out Mercutio. I thought he was amazing. Like, okay, here's why the Mercutio in this one was good, because he captured both the big brother seriousness of Mercutio, but also that kind of like playfulness. But he didn't go too far with it.
Yeah.
He didn't turn Mercutio into full blown jester mode, you know. But that's what makes Mercutio interesting, though, is that there is that duality.
That death scene is so great in the Zeffirelli version
Yes.
when Mercutio's dying and he's making and the way they frame it so that he's joking, and then he's kind of his face. He's like, "Fetch a surgeon!" Like, you know, like
Yep.
just and they like that kind of like awkward hesitation of, "Oh, Mercutio's fine," but then all like, "Oh, he's dead." Like
Yeah.
that actor did it great. The kind of transition because it's sudden and it's hard to
Yeah.
do too. Like, but yeah, I agree with you on like Whiting. I mean, I'd never really heard of that guy. Had he done anything else like Leonard Whiting or you
Mm.
know?
Well, he left Hollywood pretty early on, I think, and stopped acting in Hollywood.
He would
Uh,
have to, yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I don't think he tried to make a long go of it in his career as a film actor. I think he did a lot of stage in England. And I'll say this, for all the visual appeal and quite frankly the visual genius of the Luhrmann adaptation, just these actors that are in the Zeffirelli version, like, and probably Zeffirelli himself, although I don't know that. Um, they just had a better understanding and a better handle on this material and on this dialogue, and they didn't have to go so fucking hard. You know, the I feel like the Mercutio death scene and Romeo's subsequent confrontation with Tybalt is less like, you know, like Leonardo, you know, like the guy who's playing Mercutio in the Luhrmann one screaming, you know, and then Leonardo DiCaprio, like really kind of like, you know, like screaming, lots of screaming, and these folks have a better handle on the material and let the material do a lot more of the talking in this film, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one thing I guess people always criticize Luhrmann for is the kind of over stylized stuff that he
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
There are parts of it that I actually really thought worked in the 96 version with Leo. But I've had the same
Yeah.
thing, like comparing Leo DiCaprio to Leo Whitney. Leo,
Yes.
he's young. You know, Leo's young in that role, and he gets a little shouty. But overall, I thought he was good casting for it. Even
Agreed.
yeah, like even Leonard Whiting in the 68 version is I see why they cast him as Romeo.
Sure.
I don't know. I mean, maybe I've just seen too many versions of it, or like, you know, when like you're reading something and you have that picture of it in your head, and then when it doesn't match up to what you see on screen, when somebody else's interpretation of it, you know, you're almost like, like,
Yes.
there's like there is a slight edge to Romeo, I think. And like you mentioned this earlier, because of that romanticizing, it's almost a desperation in like the male psyche to over romanticize love in this way that Romeo would or does in the story. There's just a slight edge to him, I feel like, that is probably really hard to capture as an actor. I've done, amateur acting. I've never done anything at the level of being in a movie. But then again, I mean, I see some people that go do movies all the time that that can't act or whatever. But, I did like theater and shit, and it. Yeah, I mean that's hard to capture, but yeah, there's like a slight little edge to Romeo that I think Leo captures a little bit better in that. But he goes slightly over the top because he's young at that time and kind of shouts to compensate for. I don't know. But yeah. What did you think of the Luhrmann version?
Well, I mean, I was really kind of impressed with. I mean, I don't know. Well, like, where did Baz Luhrmann come from, and where did his confidence come from to make a movie that bold? And it's really bold, and it has like a very theatrical sensibility. It understands, I guess, how this movie could be interesting to anyone is by like putting in a lot of motion, color, music, and it's so stylized, and he's able to use costume to differentiate between, like he's able to help us visually understand what's happening, and that was so important because the movie really is, I think, it's like for teenagers.
Yeah, and it was a teenage sensation when it came. I was a little too young. But and my point would just be like, that's quite the achievement to make this material accessible, and not just accessible, but like for us to be able to understand it, no matter our level of comprehension of already knowing what the story is about, of understanding what the dialogue's about. He's able to tell this movie visually, and I think does a great job of it. And makes a lot of choices, and they don't all hit, but every one of them is like a choice and an original choice at that. And so, I'm very impressed by the film. I don't think it's I'm not necessarily saying that like everything about it rubs me the right way. And then again, like I said, it was made for teenagers. But I think it's quite the accomplishment, and I'm going to go out on a limb, and maybe people can accuse me of being a contrarian, but I really groove. I groove more with Zeffirelli, like in terms of like, how do I want to experience this story, and how do I want to experience this dialogue, and just what's my mood? What is my mood? And my mood is more, at this point in my life, Zeffirelli. And quite frankly, I didn't have an appreciation for what Zeffirelli was doing in terms of costume, in terms of choreography, and also, of course, the acting. Yeah.
I didn't get that when I I thought, like I just kind of thought this is dry and old-fashioned, but it's not. But then again, the Romeo, the Luhrmann one is so MTV. It's so MTV, but in a good way. That's not. I'm not denigrating that. That was at the peak of, the kind of like the confluence of Hollywood storytelling and what we learned from the music video.
Yeah.
What we learned from the big epic music video.
Peak TRL. Yeah.
Yeah.
It just peaked, like that was the coolest shit. And even the visual stuff, like my favorite visual stuff with Luhrmann's was that scene when he's in the tomb, which they kind of make like a funeral home kind of thing. The red crosses that line the entire like aisle as he's going down, like to her kind of coffin. I
Yeah.
was just like, this is so stunning and it works, even though it's so like neon, like bright. Like you would never think of to put this in a Romeo and Juliet adaptation. For some reason, it just works.
Yes.
But then, like, you know, I have a kind of like, I'm hit or miss with Luhrmann. I think he's kind of hit or miss in all the stuff he does. Like, I think there are parts of it that are really good, and overall, the product can be good, like the final product. But like, there's always little things that I'm like, ooh, you're so stylized. There's just things that I'm like a little quirked on. For example, dude, he got points against him. No balcony scene. He took away the balcony scene, and I get it. You know, it's cliche at that point. Like it had been,
Yes.
500 years of people putting on this play and making movies. He was trying to freshen it up a little bit, but I was just like, there are some things that you just can't freshen up. Like no matter how, because it's just too iconic. It's almost no matter how you try to go against it. So, for example, something like that balcony scene, if you try to freshen that up or change our expectations or something, it's almost disappointing because it's just so expected that there's no getting around it. You just have to bite the bullet as a filmmaker and kind of give the audience that and do it your way, obviously, and make it fresh however you want or can. But yeah, for that, when like he fell instead of having the balcony scene, I was like, oh, I want to have Romeo looking up, be like, be soft. What light through yonder window breaks? It is the sun, or is the east, and Juliet is the sun.
Well, yeah, that's the thing though. It's like, that's the thing is that I admire the guts that it took to take on this material and not be at all a household name at that point in time, you know?
Yeah, and I like that he wasn't as precious about it too. Like he wasn't precious about it with the legacy and all of that. You can get over precious and try to make it too. There was a Pride and Prejudice remake, one of the more recent ones, wasn't it? Or was it one of the ones in the 90s that it almost is too precious with the material, I feel like. But then again, I need to rewatch these. I haven't seen them in a while, but
I really like, I mean, and you may be talking about this version, but I'm a really big fan of that, like 2000.
the Keira Knightley.
I like it a lot.
Yeah. That I wasn't talking about. Yeah, that one's good.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. I think. Yeah, man.
Mr. Darcy, dude.
Yep.
Isn't Mr. Darcy Tom from Succession in that one?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. That's hilarious.
Yeah. Dude, that actor, I don't even know his name, dude, that actor, but he's fucking great. He should be in more stuff. Like,
well, and I really like Keira Knightley. I think
too, yeah.
She's great.
And she's really beautiful in like a very specific way, you know? Like she's not like this beauty queen, but she's also like, I don't even want to say girl next door because she's not that either. She's like too pretty for that. Like,
yeah,
she just has this aura about her, particularly at that time, the Pirates of the Caribbean, the Pride and Prejudice of that time, the kind of the things she was making. Yeah, she was just smoking hot. What
she was.
Yeah, bro. What do you make of Leo and Claire Danes in the title roles?
I think like I was saying, I think Leo is a little well, I don't know. You made a great point where I don't know, there is something like really like that like desperate teenage romantic sensitive boy. Like it's very, very yeah, like it feels true to life, and so I don't ding him. I don't ding him for that, and I think the look that he has is kind of perfect. Like I don't think it could have been really anybody else.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's so iconic, and Romeo's so iconic, and then I mean, I just think that Claire Danes could do no wrong from her early career. I thought she was fantastic. I think the maturity is like her maturity and being able to play this role is really striking.
Yeah.
And I think again, like nobody else could have done this. I think you could have only gotten somebody who's like, I don't know, exceptionally gifted for a young person, and she is. And
she's one who's had like a it seems almost maybe it's the Juliet curse where like it feels like her career should have been bigger
Agreed.
post that role. Because I mean, you know, I saw her in what was the show,
Homeland.
Homeland. Yeah,
Never saw it.
she's fantastic. Like she's just gotten better as she's gotten older as like an actor. You know, like she's great in that. And that's a more, you know, more modern role and stuff, and she has to play like kind of a big range, a much bigger range than just like a teenager in love, blinded by love or whatever. But like, still, I was always just like, maybe it's like the cursed role to get cast as Juliet in a big Shakespeare rendition. If you end up like Olivia Hussey or Claire Danes with your career, like you think they would be huge, have these huge careers after it, but then they don't.
Yeah, well, you know, you just kind of wonder, like, how do these things, why do these things go the way they go? I mean, is it because of her agent? Is it because people think of her as because she was such like a, you know, she was in My So-Called Life and she was so young,
Right.
and she was so young, and people are like, this is not an adult, like I can't see this woman in this adult role or whatever, and they kind of dismiss. But yeah, man, I mean, I think that's a good question, because yet you would think that she was headed for a huge career, like a kind of like a Meryl Streep
Yeah.
kind of arc, and that didn't happen. And maybe she's okay with.
I'm sure she got enough money from that movie that she never had to work again, like if she didn't want to. Yeah. Because that was one of those movies that I remember I was a little too young, but I had an older sister. So I was like I was about 7 or 8 when that movie came out. And then my sister was like 13, you know? So prime age for that. Like she saw it in theaters, you know, a bunch of times with friends and things. And I remember she got the soundtrack. That's how I knew the soundtrack, and like the images and like the kind of cover art on that soundtrack and the big VHS box that we had when it came out on video eventually. But I was just thinking, like, this was pre-Titanic too, right? For Leo, wasn't Titanic the year after? So that was like, was this the first, like heartthrob role for Leo? Like big.
Yeah, I don't remember where I'd heard of him prior to this.
Arnie and What's Eating Gilbert Grape, or
what was the first one you said?
Arnie and What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
Yeah, What's Eating Gilbert Grape? That would have been the one that. But he was also on the show briefly that I watched when I was a kid, called Growing Pains. It was like a television sitcom.
Kirk Cameron.
I mean, he was really born into the life, but. Yeah, but I mean, I can't, at this point in my life, I can't picture anybody else being in either of those roles, and fortunately, you know, the ensemble that they're surrounded by is so heavy with different characters, and obviously like loads and loads of talent, that young people, it takes some of the pressure off of this role, whether it's you know, whether it's those kids that are in Zeffirelli or it's this movie, you know.
And I was thinking the Mercutio in Luhrmann, he was the actor. I can't think of his name, but he was in a lot of shit in the 90s. He was in Oz, right?
Right.
Yeah.
He was the guy in the wheelchair.
Yeah. That narrates like he narrates the whole series.
Yeah, he does. Hey, look, Andrew, I think I need to like go and get some dinner before,
for sure, bro.
Don't hit the sack. So
yeah. Final thoughts, Brendan? Any final thoughts on Romeo and Juliet or either of these versions? I think I might, for listeners, do like a deep dive on Romeo and Juliet films. I like to do that sometimes. For a bonus something, but yeah. Final thoughts on anything, Brendan? Romeo and Juliet, Shakespeare, Luhrmann, Zeffirelli.
Yeah,
Brendan's Heart and Soul.
Yeah. Well, I think you know, when this is a cautionary tale about you know, the adults in the lives of these kids because like they're unsupervised and they have their own ideas about the world, and I think they're a little bit trying to escape their families and the conflict that they see. It's a wonderful play, and I think that anybody who read it or pretended to read it high school should go back and take a second look, and and maybe start with and maybe start with the Baz Luhrmann one and work your way backwards. See how that goes.
Yeah.
But
or even like just this is one of those plays that's always going on at like a local theater group or something, like, because it's a great one for actors. Just the tickets to that, if it's like a local one, probably pretty cheap. Take a girl out, take somebody out, listeners, to go see that local college or whatever doing it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. Every time I go and see Shakespeare in person, I'm rewarded.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm rewarded, and I'm just looking. I'm trying to see where am I going to go see Shakespeare next, and I was just Googling it. I'm trying to find. Who's this? The Southwest Shakespeare Company. Where are they? Where are they located? 30 years we've been Arizona's standard bearer for classical theater. Hell yeah. Even Arizona has a standard bearer. Oh, they're right here in the east side of Phoenix.
There you go.
Hell yeah. What do they got going on here? Oh shit. They even do plays at Taliesin West, which was Frank Lloyd Wright's house in the desert. So we got some Merchant of Venice coming up here next in the spring at Frank Lloyd Wright's house.
That's a great one.
Yeah. Great.
Little date night for all those out there in Arizona. The Southwest.
Definitely. Yeah. So, but I'm inspired to go and see some plays. I always forget, that that's an option.
Yeah, the live theater too.
Yeah, 12th night coming up here in October.
That's another good one to see live. Yeah.
Man, that sounds great.
All right, drop your handles. Where can people find your stuff, Brendan, and Tales from the Mall?
Okay, so if you want to really explore the show, then you want to go to patreon.com/Tales from the Mall. There's a lot of content on there that's you can access for only $5 a month. It's like 169 episodes of the show, 169 interviews, plus several after hours. I think we've done 10 after hours episodes. You can hear Andrew in either case.
Oh yeah.
So there's a huge archive going back almost 3 years. We'll have my 3-year anniversary here in November. On Twitter, I'm at Luso, LUSO_Brendan. And then on Instagram, Tales_from_the_mall.
Hell yeah. Get it out there, listeners. Give it a follow, give it a like, give it a listen. Go check it out. Again, I'm on there. Brendan's out there doing great stuff. Brendan, thanks for taking the time, man. This has been a lot of fun, as I knew it would be, dude. Little romantic boy summer.
Absolutely. Thank you for thinking of me. I had a blast, and don't hesitate to think of me again in the future.
Oh yeah, we'll have to have you back, boy.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, this has been another episode of Heavy Board.
Heavy.
Bored.
Heavy.
I am heavy bored.
I may say male is entirely hostile. No!
Resources.
Life, friends, is boring. We must not say so.
a lack of gratitude for life. Bored. I aspire to boredom, I should say.
Bored. Heavy.
I am heavy.
Bored.
Has you the night sweats and the day sweats, pal? Pal, I do.